From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log. Let's look at a couple of stories, especially some that have happened while you and I were apart. I want to talk just a little bit about Dave Chappelle and his Netflix special, which I have not seen because I don't have Netflix. I'm not going to go out and buy a streaming service just so I can comment on a story, but I've read a lot about it. Now, again, I haven't seen it, but just some general thoughts that I think have been missed in the debate, and I have read quite a lot. I think you know how I feel about so-called cancel culture. I think it's people crying and whining that they don't get to have everything they want. They seem to think that they have this right somehow, this God-given right to say whatever they want. Well, yeah, I believe in freedom of speech, but if you're going to be criticized, so be it. To me, that I'm a bigger defender of freedom of speech because I defend those who criticize those who speak. You can't just say anything you want and expect not to be criticized. Now, when it comes to getting fired, there it gets a little murkier, and I don't want to see people fired from their jobs. But let's face it, this is your system, not mine, okay? It's the whole money thing, the whole capitalism thing, that's not me. But if you want to defend that system, then you also, I think, are required to defend so-called cancel culture. So, for example, the Chappelle thing. If the people at Netflix felt, as they don't, obviously, but if they felt that this was going to cost them money, if this was going to affect their bottom line, they have every right to remove that special from their list of offerings. They have every right to not hire Dave Chappelle back again for the next one. Again, this is your system, not mine. Within that money system, within capitalism, the entity, the platform, has absolutely every right. And you can take it to any level. Look at the National Football League. They fire, the Las Vegas Raiders fired John Gruden because of emails that were racist. Okay, absolutely. It's going to hurt our brand. Yeah, absolutely. You call it cancel culture, whine and fuss all you want, but that's the system you want. Now, if you want to come along with me, and if you want to abolish money, which I want to do, if you want to absolutely end the practice of capitalism entirely, if you want to abolish profit, all things that I call for, now we're living in a different world, and now you have a different reaction when so-called cancel culture issues come up. All right, let's live in my world for a minute. There's no such thing as money. There's no such thing as profit. But Dave Chappelle is still a very popular comedian because, let's face it, he's a very talented guy. He's very smart. He's very funny. People like to listen to him, be entertained by him. That's all well and good. Well, suppose he said all these horrible things, and again, I haven't seen it, so I'm not going to judge what he said. But everything is just as it is, except there's no money. Now, how do you have this fight? How do you have this debate? Well, everybody speaks up. Everybody decides where they stand on what he said. And some criticize him and some defend him. But he's in no danger of losing his ability to earn his living, because in this no profit, no money world, an outfit like Netflix would be free for everybody to see. Everybody who works at Netflix and everybody who is featured, every artist is featured on that platform, is there because they've earned it. Because the public has decided, yes, this is a person I want to see. So in a no-money world, Dave Chappelle says whatever he wants to say. Everybody else says what they want to say about what he had to say. And we just have a nice little debate. And the whole thing moves forward. Because I'm an advocate of the idea, as simple and old-fashioned as it sounds, that the best remedy for bad speech, for questionable speech, is more free speech. So there actually would be a marketplace. We talk about the free marketplace of ideas. Well, there can be no free marketplace of ideas as long as the marketplace of money supersedes everything else. So we take away the marketplace of money. Now the marketplace of ideas actually works. And that is that people with good ideas rise to the top. Those with bad ideas fall to the bottom. Nobody is deprived of their livelihood. This marketplace of ideas actually works. All right, so there's that. And the other thing I feel compelled to repeat, I'm sure I've said it before and other people have said it, the idea of comedy itself and the notion of punching up or punching down. Now, comedy works because, and this goes through the ages, all right? This goes back to cave paintings probably, I don't know. I don't know where it began, but it's always been with us. The idea of satire, especially, you punch up. The aim of your ridicule, your satire, your sarcasm, whatever it is, your aim, your target, your victim, if you will, is people in power. People who deserve it. You have an opinion about something. If you're doing jokes about race or transgender folks, then the aim of your humor, so-called, should be at those who are oppressing everybody else. You don't aim your jokes at the people who are already in trouble. Now, you can do that and watch an episode of Gutfeld on Fox News, and you'll see that. So-called conservative humor is always punching down. They're punching at people with no power. They're making fun of women and LGBTQ folks and immigrants, and they're on the side of and trying to promote the oppressors. Now, I suppose you can try that, but again, in the marketplace of ideas, it's not going to fly. You're going to have a very small following. The only reason it exists to the extent it does exist is because we go back to the marketplace of money and profit. You can make money doing it because those who want to hold their money and power use their money and power to hold their money and power. And I don't want to get too deeply into this again because I'm a little tired of it personally, and I know you and I have spoken about it before. But the fact is that on the conservative side of the ledger here in America anyway, the money and the power folks, the one percenters, the oppressors, they don't really care. They don't care about race and sex and all the social issues. They don't care. But they use it to manipulate the voters. And they've somehow have this unholy alliance between their holding of money and power with these social issues. So they use abortion. They use immigration. They use LGBTQ. They use sexism, all of it, to form this alliance in order to get the votes they need, because we still live in an electoral system, at least for the moment we do. And that's not working for them so great lately. So they're working on ending the electoral system as we know it. But let's not get into that. So there's money to be made. There's profit to be made. There's power to be retained by pushing all these sort of deplorable ideas of racism, sexism, homophobia, etc. One other thing I want to say about artists generally, and especially the Dave Chappelle story and others like it, and that is that writers, creative types, comedians, performers, they feel like it seems like they think they have a right to hold their position. Just the fact that they've already had success and they have fans is all the justification they need to say, well, you can't take that away from me. Well, no. I go back to the example of, remember a couple of years ago, Kathy Griffin, the comedian, had that horrible photo shoot where she was holding the severed head of Donald Trump. And it was just horrible. It was deplorable. And at the time, I said, no, she stepped way over the line. And as far as cancel culture goes, yeah, cancel her. She can go get a real job. To my mind, that was so far over the line that she surrendered any expectation of holding her platform. She doesn't have a right to that. She can go work as a server somewhere. She can get a job in a meat processing plant. You know? Nobody has a right to their position. You have to earn it. Artists absolutely have a right to free speech, but they do not have a right to their platform. They have to earn that. I have a right to free speech. Does that automatically give me a right to be on network television or be on HBO or Netflix? No, I've got my little podcast. I do what I can. And this podcast will be exactly as successful as it deserves to be. Well, at least in a better world. If we lived in the no money, no profit world, I'd be right on top. But no, we mustn't feel sorry for artists, performers, writers who get called out on very inappropriate bad speech that hurts people. And yeah, if your speech is hurting people, then you should be called out. And from what I understand of the criticism of Dave Chappelle, he seems to have a kind of a fundamental misunderstanding of transgender people, and he makes them the butt of their jokes, which is a little bit of a gray area, because humor generally, we get philosophical about comedy here, which I like to do. It's not only satire. It's not all just political and attacking those in power. A lot of it is observational humor, right? The whole sort of Jerry Seinfeld model. That's a huge part of what comedy is. And making fun of or making light of personal foibles and just funny things that we all do. Now there you can make fun of types of people and groups. You know, women do this and men do that. And you could expand that to, well, gay folks do this and straight folks do that, and you can mine humor from that, sure. But you do have to be a little careful, because you don't want your presentation to hurt people. And if your presentation is dehumanizing people, suggesting that they don't even have a right to exist, suggesting that they're fundamentally wrong about their own identity, all things that Chappelle has been accused of here, you got to listen. I mentioned this once or twice before. The great Norm Macdonald, very funny guy who died recently, very sadly. The story about how he had some material in his stand-up that was, making fun of people, which is what comics do. They make fun of people. Well, he discovered that his audience, especially his audience when he would play gigs in the South, he found that his audience was taking it not the way he intended. They were misunderstanding the jokes. And they were loving them. They were loving the jokes. They thought they were very funny because they thought they were making fun of, and I don't remember the details. It was gay folks or black folks. I forget, one of those. All right. So they basically misunderstood his jokes and were laughing for the wrong reason, so to speak. And when he discovered that that was the case, people would come up to him after the show and say, yeah, you really gave it to them. They really are horrible. He began to understand, oh, wait a minute. They're not getting this the way I intended. And to his credit, he took that material out of his set. Now, that's the way you do it. If you're, and take it beyond comedy, if you're a communicator of any kind, and if what you're saying is not being understood by a wide swath of people, and they're using your words to advance ideas that you find abhorrent, well, then as the performer, you take that responsibility and you take it out of your set. That is the responsibility of the performer, to make your material clear enough that people get it. There's one little exception to that. A few years ago, Al Franken was sued by Rush Limbaugh. Yeah, he'd written a book, Rush Limbaugh is a Big Fat Idiot. and the book was about how Rush Limbaugh was just wrong about everything and about how he lied about everything. And it was, I read it, it was hilarious, and it was cutting, and it was biting, and it was, kind of good old fashioned satire. You throw your darts at the person with the power. And Rush Limbaugh sued him. And of course, it was just laughed out of court. And I bring this up now because the judge agreed with Al Franken's argument that just because the object of my satire doesn't understand it, just because he's too dumb to understand it, doesn't give him any legal standing to make me cease and desist. So that was the judge's ruling. So there's a little exception to what I said. Yeah, if the listener doesn't understand, it's your responsibility to make them understand. Well, in this case, the object of the satire was just thin-skinned. And while we're on the subject here, I came across a really interesting article this weekend. Headline, "The creative sector is slowly owning up to its role in the climate crisis." So I'm switching gears a little bit here, but not too much. I want to stay in the idea of creative people using their wares, their talents in the world. And by the creative sector, I mean it's a huge, huge sector of the American economy, of American culture. You can't turn around without having some message being aimed at you, whether it's a movie you're watching or a comedy or drama series, or the advertising we're bombarded with all the time. Because everywhere you look, the billboards along the highway, there are millions of creative people creating content that you're absorbing every day, consciously, subconsciously, intentionally, unintentionally. Well, this article I found really interesting because there's a bit of a movement here, especially where it regards climate change. The New York Times reported recently that more than 1,100 employees of McKinsey, which is a big PR advertising agency, have signed a petition imploring the consulting firm to disclose exactly how much carbon its clients emit. And this is something that I've advocated for all my life. Whatever job you're in, you need to take some responsibility for what the product of your work is creating in the world. Now, this is a soft spot for me because I've always been in the creative fields. I've worked in advertising. I've worked as an artist, as an illustrator. I've worked in theater as an actor and director. I've worked in television. I've worked in radio. My whole life has been about creating content. When I was a kid, I wanted to be Darren Stevens. He was the husband on Bewitched. And he was an advertising executive, but he was an artist. He would come up with campaigns, right? A lot of the episodes had that storyline. Oh, Darren has this new campaign, and he'd make drawings and he'd come up with different ideas for advertising. I thought, well, what a fun way to make a living. And as a kid, I was always carrying around my sketchbook and drawing cartoons, and I knew from the very beginning that I would be in the creative field. And that's what wound up happening. I was in bands, and I was a singer and actor and a visual artist. I had my hand in all sorts of things. I wasn't particularly good at any of them, but I was good enough to pursue them as a hobby and then into my early career. So I've always done this for a living. But my dream of being Darren Stevens ended pretty quickly. I did, in fact, get a job at an advertising agency as an illustrator. And I got very uncomfortable very quickly because I was also politically minded. And I thought, well, how am I using my talents? What's the actual product here? How is it impacting the world? And that job didn't last long at all. From that, I went on to a newspaper, a kind of a small weekly newspaper, where I worked in the advertising department. It was just me and the old guy. It was a two-person department. And part of my job there also was designing print advertising, and illustrating was part of that. And that I felt a little better about. It was just good local folks with their little local business, advertising their wares, kind of harmless. But I didn't want to go any further than that. And then I wound up doing other things, as I said, singer, actor, director, all sorts of stuff. But I never wanted to or had the interest in going back into anything like advertising or PR. For this very reason. So much of what is being advertised, is being pushed, is being promoted, is for profit. It's bad for the planet. It's bad for people. Convincing everybody they have bad breath so they buy your toothpaste. It's a world I just didn't want to be a part of. So I shifted gears. And I made a promise to myself very early that my creative output would never go just to line somebody else's pockets, or even worse, to harm people or harm the planet. And let's be honest, there are a lot of products, maybe most of them. There are just few exceptions to this rule. Most of what we're being sold is either bad for us or bad for the planet, if you break it down. So regarding climate change, there's a bit of a movement. Solitaire Townsend is co-founder of the communications agency Futera and did a little TED Talk recently in Edinburgh, where she explained that while I'm reading now from Quartz.com. She explained that while the trillion-dollar sector's carbon footprint may be negligible, its impact is immeasurable. And by trillion-dollar sector, she's talking about the whole world of advertising, PR, and the whole, creative side. She's quoted here. These problem solvers and storytellers act as the grease in the wheel of all other businesses on Earth. Very true. Very true. And I'm happy to see this. I'd love it to turn into a movement. If you're a creative, to the point where you thought you'd really, try to make your living as a writer, as an actor, as a visual artist, only a very small sliver of all of us creatives really get to do it on our own terms. Actors wind up doing commercials. That was a decision I was faced with many years ago when I was a young actor. I had an agent, and she was sending me out on these commercial auditions. And I got one or two of them. But I thought after a while, my God, why? This is not how I want to live. Being a dancing cowboy for a potato chip company. I still have many friends, because this is the world I grew up in as a young adult, still have many friends in television. And sometimes I wonder, what kind of satisfaction can there be in that? I lost interest very early in that kind of work. And I don't think I'm not better than anybody. I'm not holier than thou. But I did decide, no, I'm not going to be part of that. The article on Quartz talks a little bit about the big BP spill in the Gulf of Mexico a couple years ago, and how the PR firm was very successful in that campaign. The aforementioned Ms. Townsend quoted again, arguably, the creative industry has done a better job of cleaning up BP's image than BP has yet done cleaning up the Gulf of Mexico. So if you have dreams of being a creative, a professional creative, there are lots of things to navigate here and hurdles to cross or not cross if you make that decision. Because if you're in the commercial side of it, which I don't know. I can't think of one single creative who hasn't had to. I'm sure there are one or two out there, but the great majority of anybody in the creative fields, you have to spend part of your time in the commercial realm, at least to start out. And then if you're very successful, you can pick and choose your projects. If you're a very successful artist, you can just paint the paintings you want to paint. You don't have to take any commissions. You don't have to illustrate for an ad agency. But most, 99% of us creatives have to support yourself in the commercial side of things. And then you're forced to either turn a blind eye. I'm not responsible for the climate crisis. I'm just responsible for putting together this campaign for BP or for Exxon. I'm not responsible for the groundwater pollution caused by this big ag plant. I'm just designing their packaging because that's what I am. I'm a creative designer. So I draw the cartoon cow that goes on the milk cartons. Whatever it is. You can have a million examples here. And then if you are fortunate enough to become this great independent artist and you do exactly what you want to do, you're Dave Chappelle. You don't have to do anything. Your voice is 100% your voice. Well, now you got Dave Chappelle's problem. You got to think about what you're going to say. It comes down to responsibility. I'll tell you who I don't understand at all. I don't understand big, famous celebrities. Why they feel the need to have a line of fashion or a line of jewelry or perfume or makeup or become a spokesman for a big car company or a big... I'll tell you the one that bugs me the most is, there are many examples. But Samuel L. Jackson, great movie star, very popular guy, is the spokesperson for some big bank. Which one is it? The What's in Your Wallet bank. I don't remember which one it is. But every time I see him, why are you doing this? These big evil banks. You're okay with all of that? I don't understand why big stars who are already millionaires have to make another couple of million. I can never understand that. So I was happy to see this little idea that at least some creatives, actors, writers, designers, starting to take some responsibility for their role. As Townsend pointed out, all of these great businesses doing all of this great harm, they literally couldn't exist without this huge army of creatives, image makers, storytellers, artists, musicians. There's this whole beautiful world invented and wrapped around these products and services that are doing immeasurably more harm than good. Well, I'm over my time. You know I love you. Talk to you tomorrow. I'm Charles Purcell.